Okay,
Oh no.
so I figure that I could go over the build first. We'll take a look at the build. Um, we'll take a look at the armor. We'll take a look at the traits, that kind of thing, just so that we have more of like a shared understanding of what our utilities do, what our weapon skills do, what our traits are there for. Um, So yeah, just start going over the equipment that we have. The build that we have in meta builds is going to be Marauder with Scholar runes. You could start out with Marauder trinkets. Some people will opt to go Berserker if they trust that their supports will keep them alive, that their movement is to the point where they're able to survive a little better. Um, but it is okay if you want to start off with Marauder. But personally, I tend to opt towards Berserker. But either way, take your pick when you get started. The nice thing is that you can swap these out once you get a better understanding of the class. Once you feel more comfortable playing it. Um, so yeah, we have Berserker weapons over here. The sigils that we're running, we have a mixture of nullification, bloodlust. I might opt to put absorption on here. I think absorption is actually fairly decent. You will get some procs off fears, but it's good to start out with this for now. Um, the utilities we run are going to be Well of Corruption, Well of Suffering, Trail of Anguish. Our elite is going to be Ghastly Breach, and our heal is going to be Sandflare. These two wells, obviously, we will call for them on well bombs or well spikes. We're going to try and take advantage of these when we get these down. We're going to try and use them on a clump of an enemy that we're either pushing directly on top of or they're pushing directly on top of us. It should help to enable us to get in a closer range, perhaps even melee, to really take advantage of the damage that's going out on these. Now, they recently nerfed the Well of Suffering in World versus World. This tooltip is not accurate right now, but yeah, the damage dropped down a little bit. It's still impactful though. You still get some vulnerability out. Obviously, condies will be cleared pretty rapidly against good groups. If you take advantage of a couple of seconds of vulnerability, that's good too. Your Trail of Anguish, I guess it kind of serves two purposes. It's very, very powerful as an offensive weapon. It isn't target capped, right? So you could hit multiple targets, above 5 targets, assuming you move through them or they move through your trail that you drop. It is a very powerful resource. I guess I'll just leave it at that. Um, you know, your allies get stability from it, they get swiftness, and you're also converting boons into conditions on enemies. So, ideally you're going to be using this as we're moving through the enemy, or it could be a complement to your other foot damage that you're going to be dropping down if the enemy is moving through us. But ideally, if you could get like a really nice trail off as we move through an enemy, or if we're pushing into an enemy, you're going to get a lot of value out of it. Now, it does have the break stun ability and it does provide stability as well. Ideally, you're not having to use this as like a break stun. It's there if you absolutely need it, if the only other alternative is death. But ideally, you're not using this as a break stun because of its offensive capabilities, given that it is not AoE capped or target capped. Your Ghastly Breach, that's another AoE boon corrupt. This is what we were looking for when we're getting hard pushed by an enemy group. Um, some groups that we go against, they're going to be pretty W key heavy. They're going to be pretty aggressive. This is going to be one of the greater deterrents that we have available to us that will help prevent those W keys or to punish the enemy when they do try to W key against us. Um, Make sure that you're getting good value out of this. If I go back to the game and we take a look here, and let's say Callie's approaching us on the squiggly, a lot of groups, I think it depends on the group, but we should be roughly aware of who does this. But groups like Indo will push in and then they'll like stop or they'll like super speed back. They're going for like a hit and then super speed back. You don't really want to be using your Ghastly Breach at that point in time. You want to be using your Ghastly Breach once they actually full commit onto us, okay? Additionally, if we are the aggressors, let's say, we're fighting, maybe a weaker group out there, like, a QI, for example, and we're able to pretty easily push in on them without much foot damage or stopping power. They're not really synchronizing their traps. They're not getting their breaches down at their feet. We could definitely use it offensively as well, but I would say against the more skilled groups like Indo, or if we drop down next week and we're fighting caning, those caning groups, you're gonna want to wait to use your breach until like they're directly on top of us. Basically, we don't want to whiff it. We don't want to waste it. Basically, so That's breach for you. We covered trail. The two wells we already went over. I would say drop your well of corruption first, followed by your well of suffering. Your well of corruption is going to have a 7 second. Well, I don't know what it is in world versus world. We'll probably check the tooltip. But your well of corruption is going to have a longer cooldown in world versus world than your well of suffering. So you want to get that down first and get the cooldown started on that first before going into your well of suffering. Ideally, we're
It's
getting.
also
Go ahead.
it's also really nice if you can lay them down in a way because they're moving when you're laying your wells down. So if you can lay down the one and get that second one done a little bit away from the other one, so they're going through your second well.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely movement dependent from the enemy. You're gonna try and hit like the meat of their group, like the big clump that they have. Um, you could lead your wells a little bit, but not too much. You don't want to really be trying to big brain predict where the enemy's going to move because that could always change. A lot of groups are agile, they're mobile. They'll quickly move away from damage or move away from spikes. So, if Callie's moving in, she's on the spiral, try and lay it like, maybe directly on top of the spiral, if not a little ahead, like in the direction she's moving. You lay both down, you can get them out pretty quickly. You want to hit like a condensed or a confined area rather. So, all of us together, we should be hitting roughly the same area, as indicated by my marker that I'm putting down.
So the goal is to make them concentric, right? Not to spread them out in two ovals. It should look more
No.
like this.
No, no, you're trying to so a lot of the ways that we're going to be generating downs in world versus world with our spikes is by using skills at the same time as each other, basically in the same location. There's a lot of skills that do a lot of damage. There have been some power nerfs recently, but we're going to get the biggest bang for a buck on spikes when we're using skills at the same time in the same location. That's how you generate the most amount of downs on an enemy. If you're just doing it like, willy-nilly in like different locations like this, you're not going to get as much value out of them. You're going to reduce the chance that you're going to be generating downs on the enemy. So realistically, we want to get them in the same location, the same meaty location of the enemy Zerg.
Got it.
A lot of our damage problems have come from us, kind of staggering damage or not really focusing at the same time. And we're trying to really fix that because we have the players,
not
right?
pad the meters.
What's that?
Not pad the meters by
Yeah.
throwing them off cooldown willy-nilly whenever you see a clump. I will interject as a caveat with the wells. There is a cast time on it, so it is very, very easy to interrupt yourself during your
Yes.
cast and canceling your cast.
Yeah, so just keep an eye on that. Don't try and cancel. So if you do your Well of Suffering too quickly after your Well of Corruption, there's a chance that you could interrupt it. It's not that huge of a window, so like you do them pretty quickly, one after the other. But just be careful about that. Be mindful of that. Be looking, or just quickly take a glance at your utility bar just to make sure you didn't cancel out one of your wells. I've done it before. I would say every Necro has probably done it once in their lives. Playing Necro at least, if not way more than that.
Yeah, the one I tend to cancel out the most is my second cast, because then it's like an oh shit, cast something else, and I cancel out my second well.
Sure, it's definitely a possibility too. Also, Ninjas, you asked, do you prefer to call wells or to let people free fire? I like to call wells. There are a lot of groups out there, even groups on CD, that will just let their Neckers free fire their wells. And I think you have varying levels of success with that. You might have a really good group who's just the best in the world, and they're just really good at knowing when they need to drop their damage. However, I would say we're going to get the greatest benefit out of it if we are using them at the same time, with the other Neckers in our group. I would prefer not to stagger them out. Well Spike, even though it's been neutered a little bit, is still very valuable. Yep, War Weasel. I know there are a lot of times when I'm playing Necro, where I might be following another commander and I'm like, dang, if we had called for Wells right there, it would have been really good value, or, oh, that Wells call was not great. I don't call for the most perfect Wells all the time either, but I do try and call for them frequently enough where, the Necros aren't sitting there twiddling their thumbs, just waiting for that well call. So
if you don't have a commander that's calling for it, or even if Rawl does, another really good thing to keep your eyes out for is a bubble, and get your wells in a bubble.
Yeah, and I need you guys to hold me accountable to that, because sometimes I will waste our wells. I won't get them in the most opportune moment. We want to really ideally try and I don't know what the right term or the right word is, but like you want to couple them with other higher value skills. We want to get our wells down. Bubbles are good, I guess. Any sort of other AoE boon rip is good to couple with like your wells, because you will getting even more boon rip with your corruption, or rather boon corruption. That's another topic I need to talk about. But yeah, so on that note, boon corruption versus boon strip. Boon strip is first boon in, last boon, or first in, first out, I believe. Or first in, last out, rather. First in, last out is the correct term. So if you get stability and then you get other boons on top of it, those other boons will be the first to be stripped, right? Corruption works differently, however, in that you might have a set of boons on you, but if your boons are corrupted, it will randomly select from your list of boons the boons to corrupt, or the boon to corrupt. So you're going to have greater potential to corrupt stability, even if boons were padded on top of it, even if, say, the Firebrands or Scrappers or whoever else gave additional boons after that original boon of stability provision. So corruption is pretty high value. It's a little bit of chance, but it's also high value because you have a greater chance to take stability off the enemy group if they're adequately padding their boons. So I'm just going to throw that out there. And that's why Scourge is really good, because it has so many sources of boon corruption on it. So
Small question. I DC'd for a second. Which skill corrupts?
sorry, what's that?
I DC'd for a couple seconds, so I didn't catch what we were talking about with boon corruption.
Yeah,
Mostly wells.
Well, we were talking about. Did you hear the boon strip versus boon corruption stuff?
No.
Okay.
It was quiet for a bit.
Sure. So boon strip and boon corruption operate differently in how they target boons, right? So boon strip is first in, last out. And what that means is, if you provide as a Firebrand stability to your group, and then you pad it with other boons, say you use your heal mantra, you get some quickness out there, you get some protection out there. A boon strip, so a null field, for example, from a Mesmer or Chronomancer, is going to target those last applied boons, right? So that protection is going to come off, and then that quickness, and then the stability, right? So there is such a thing as boon padding, basically. So padding your boons with other, not necessarily junk boons, but other boons that are less important than stability in a fight. Corruption works differently in that it's randomized. So you could have a list of boons on your ally, say stability, protection, resistance, resolution, so on and so forth. Corruptions will randomly select a boon from that list to corrupt on the enemy, or on your ally rather, right? So if you get hit with a boon corruption, it's going to randomly select. That is why Scourges are valuable, because good groups out there will probably be padding their stability with other boons. So, if I drop a null field and, I get a couple of null fields out, say like CS my null field or something like that, I'm going to be taking in their last applied boons, or taking out their last applied boons, whereas the Scourges are going to be corrupting at random. So we have a greater chance to hit a more impactful boon like stability and take that off of the enemies. Steals, I believe, operate differently. So, thieves have boon steals. I think there's some other boon steals like absorption, for example. Those operate in an ordered list. I think it might be on the wiki somewhere, but that ordered list is just a list of boons, and there's a priority order for boon steals. So you have three levels of or three different types of boon strip, boon corrupt, and boon steals. They all operate differently, and I guess the crux of the thing is, boon corruption is of high value. So that's all I'm trying to say. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Cool. So I guess Sand Flare we could talk about real quick. That's going to provide barrier to your allies. If you use it, you'll see that your allies get some little barrier. This was nerfed, I think, earlier this year, if not later last year. I forget when exactly it was. But, there's some value there. It's not as powerful as it used to be. Yeah, it's baby barrier structs. A lot of the times we would call this, like, let's say someone got Illusion of Life. Let's say, Rhea, you're in a party. I just illusion a life to you. You're back up. You have some time left on your IOL. Usually at about, 2 or 3 seconds, we'd call for Sand Flare, or you would call for Sand Flare, and your Necro in your party would give you Sand Flare. You get the barrier, and that barrier would soak up, that IOL. It's a lot more risky these days given how small the barrier is, so that's why we kind of try and pull out of combat. Maybe get on your War Claw, maybe use your Shield 5 if you're like a Scrapper. other ways of like soaking up that final blow from Illusion of Life, but Sandflare used to provide a greater utility. Now it's just a smaller self heal and a smaller barrier. Um, the nice thing is you do convert a boon on nearby enemies into Torment and Cripple. So if we're in melee range and let's say you got your Trail of Anguish out, you need a quick heal, you could pop this and you're going to be converting another boon basically to a condition. Outside
I
of
use that.
what's up?
I was gonna say I use that a lot when, like, if we're like stealth or we're about to hit somebody, or just as we're about to clash into the enemy, I'll hit that to give us barrier and try to corrupt whatever they got.
Yeah, I'm not an everyday Scourge, so I'm not gonna like try and pretend that one is better than the other. I think you could use it for that for sure. Sometimes I like to be a little more greedy and save it if I need a quick heal. Maybe my scrapper's newer or something like that, and I need that heal available to me. But yeah, I think your use case might have some benefit, assuming you trust your supports to keep you healed up and good to go. So cool.
Rule one as a Scourge is never trust your supports.
Yeah. Yeah, so Scourge does not have a lot of like get out of jail free cards. Like, Dragon Hunter might have 2 invulns plus like 2 F3s, which is gonna block AoEs or block attacks coming onto you. Scourge doesn't really have that. Your only stun break on this class is a high value offensive weapon that you're trying not to use for like simple stun breaks. Ideally, like your Firebrand's just gonna like turn around, give you stun break, and then just keep on going. So it's very risky. Like if you're out of position on a Scourge, you can get punished pretty hard. So ideally, you're staying like directly with the tag, a couple of steps behind. I'll talk about weapon skills when I go over rotations and stuff. I just want to go over traits real quick. So we're running Spite, we're running Curses, and we're running obviously the Scourge trait line. For Spite, we're running top, middle, bottom. For Curses, we're running mid, mid, bottom. For Scourge, we're running top, middle, bottom. So there's a couple of these traits that are fairly important that I would like to go to and should help you understand the class a little better. We'll start with Spite. Spiteful Talisman is going to be deal increased strike damage to foes with no boons, focus and X skills recharge faster. So I would say you're not usually going to get a ton of value out of the dealing increased strike damage to foes with no boons. I would say the more competitive, more consistent groups that we fight, they'll usually have, at least 1 boon on them. It's very rare that we're stripping and corrupting all of their boons. They probably either really screwed up or we caught them out of stealth and they weren't expecting it, But even then, they're probably going to have like swiftness on them or something else like that, or Aegis or whatever. What we're really looking for is the focus and the axe skills recharging faster. I guess my dog is barking at someone at the door. Unfortunate if you can hear that. But anyways, Axe 3 is going to be an AoE boon corrupt, and Focus 5 is going to be a single target boon corrupt and spike skill. Very, very helpful. Next up, Awaken the Pain might grant you more power and less condition damage. Gain might when entering Shroud. What's up?
You might want to do this in Edge of the Mist. Should be free now because the skills are going to be different. Coefficients are going to be different.
Right. I know. I was looking in the practice field Discord, and they were
Just
doing
ended.
GPGs there. Yeah?
Just ended. Yep.
Fine. Let's go to EOTM. We'll take a quick intermission to go do that. So go to Edge of the Mist.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I just
can't believe you've done this to me, Moth.
He's gonna
So
make
sorry.
it out Moth. We don't get pips in Edge of the Myths, and we'll lose our spots. At least we used to.
It'll be okay. I believe you guys.
No, it won't be okay because no one's getting their things done because it's Mag.
I don't know. We already won.
It'll be alright.
We'll be fine.
Oh, I'm getting that
want to lose
bug
anyway.
again.
Alright, so if you and Kelly can go to blue team, we'll go red team again. That would be pretty cool. So just have to edit this out of the recording I'm doing.
Oh, sorry.
You're good.
Who let Expanders in here? How did he get in here?
I don't know, dude.
He lets in all the riffraff.
Wait, did I do it right?
You have to go to the banner over here, the red team or the blue team banner, and then you should be good to go. You just have to like interact with it for a second.
So you mentioned like Trail of Anguish. I don't know if you mentioned that today or another day, but that you should like do it in like a zigzag a little bit, get more
Yeah,
people,
so I mean,
or
like, when you're moving through the enemy, you could just do like the straight line, but if like you like zigzag a little bit, you're gonna like cover a little more ground, right? You're gonna get a
yeah.
few more people with it. Just do whatever like you physically can, given the supports you have and the driver you have. Try and get max value out of that Trail of Anguish, because like I said, it's uncapped AOE, no target cap on it, so it's pretty bananas, pretty broken. Um, so yeah, just to take a look at our traits. Yeah, so
They're hitting me.
we're going through Awaken the Pain. Might grant you more power and less condition damage. We don't really care about our condition damage. We care about the power. We're running a power build. That's how we're going to generate our downs with those spikes. That's why we're running Marauders. That's why we have some Berserker mixed in. Um, Might is highly valuable because we're running power. Well, power is just highly valuable in general. Um, I guess the last trait we're running here is Spiteful Spirit. You strike around you when you're entering Shroud, and you cripple nearby foes and convert their boons into conditions. Gain resolution for each foe you strike and convert additional boons on foes below the threshold. So, this is going to give you value when you go into Shroud, um, and it's also going to convert additional boons into conditions. So, there's a lot of value to be had there. Um, the other one I want to talk about it on curses, at least, moving down to curses, is Path of Corruption. So your Shroud skill 2 is going to convert um, boons into conditions on your enemies. So that's just another source of boon corruption. And then also Lingering Curse. So Lingering Curse turns your Scepter number 3 skill, which we'll talk about momentarily. I'll just change off of it real quick. So you can see that it only hits one target here. It's a little, less damage at 741, but when we turn on Lingering Curse, we now hit 5 targets, and the damage goes up a little bit. The damage increase isn't necessarily the important part. It's more so that we turn this into a 5-target skill, which is just 5 targets that we're going to be corrupting boons on. And then lastly, in the traits, we have our Scourge trait line. We run Abrasive Grit. This is so that we get Barrier from Sandflare onto our allies. The other traits in here aren't terribly amazing, so that's why we go with Abrasive Grit. Sadistic Searing. Your punishment skills give reduced recharge and cause your next Manifest Sunshade to inflict burning on foes near it. So what we really care about is the reduced recharge. So your Sandflare, your Trail of Anguish, and your Breach are all punishment skills, and those are all going to have reduced recharge thanks to this trait. Having more trails go out, having more breaches go out is awesome. We want to reduce cooldowns on that. It's very helpful. And then lastly, Feed from Corruption. When you remove a corrupted boon from an enemy, you gain that boon. So we've already seen how much corruption that this build offers and how much corruption that the Scourge offers. Now, when you corrupt boons from enemies, you're getting that boon. So you're going to have, even greater boon uptime of the boons that you're corrupting and transferring to you. Any questions on our traits, why we run them, that kind of thing?
Just one question about the utility skills.
Yeah.
Did you kind of miss Breach, or did I miss talking about Breach? Is Breach
Yeah.
really just at your feet, or am I jumping the gun?
No. So I talked about Breach a little bit. So basically, the key point with Breach is that it's one of the most valuable, W key stopping power type skills in the game, right? So, we have our Dragon Hunter traps, but we also have Ghastly Breach. Be careful when going against certain groups, and this is something I said before, but I just want to reiterate. Be careful when going against certain groups like, an Indo, or, maybe some other groups out there that will do a push into us and maybe not fully commit and then kind of back up a little bit, either super speed away or kind of like S key back while they still continue to apply ranged pressure on top of us, because it's kind of a wasted breach. Ideally, you want to use it, like let's say I'm the commander here, ideally you want to use it when the enemy's like basically on top of us. Get those breaches out, get those traps out, really punish them for those hard pushes on us. It
So
feels really bad to whiff a breach. I've done it before, but
right.
it just feels bad.
Yeah.
Good.
So that really is the only role that Breach plays, is to stop the W key. We never use Breach when we go in and we're in the middle of a meaty group. You don't drop your own Breach. You hold them and wait for you, and you use them in cases in W key case.
So
Is that
I
the right
think
thing?
if Whipple could stop doing that, that would be awesome.
Who? What?
You.
Maybe.
Please stop. No, seriously, please stop. Um, Yeah, so Raku, if you want to use it offensively, like there's certain groups you could get away with it on. Like in Indo, for example, I wouldn't use Breach like really offensively on him because he's running two scrappers in his squad or in his parties rather. He's gonna have enough super speed to really just get out of there. His supports are pretty good. I would say we want to save it for when he's going to be W keying us. Now, like if we're doing QI, we're fighting QI, just using them as an example. No offense to them or anything like that, we're able to be a little more aggressive and they're a lot slower to react and reposition. You could probably get some good, benefit out of an offensive breach. However, I would say its greatest value against the better groups in the game is going to be as a W key deterrent or a W key stopping power.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. So that's our utilities, that's our traits, that's our armor. We could talk about opening ranged exchanges, weapon sets, stuff like that. So obviously the weapons that we're running are going to be Axe Focus and Scepter Dagger. Your Scepter Dagger is going to provide a little more AoE ability, whereas your Axe Focus is going to be for single targeting or single target downing or single target finishing. We'll talk about the Scepter Dagger first. So your Scepter Dagger has some pretty valuable skills on it. The ones you're going to use most are going to be 2, 3, and 5. 2 is going to be just an area of effect 5 target damage skill. It does pretty low damage. It'll apply cripple for 7.5 seconds. If you're fighting a poorer group or a group with less supports or fewer supports, they might not clear that cripple. It might help us to get a little bit of CC on them, soft CC. But for the most part, it's just a little bit of tickle damage with a little bit of cripple attached to it. Your Devouring Darkness is the skill that we looked at that's traded. It's going to be a 5-target AoE boon corrupt. Highly valuable skill. The one caveat with this is that you need to have an enemy targeted. So if you notice, you try and use it when you don't have anybody targeted, you must have an enemy targeted to use that skill on your screen. So make sure that you're hitting tab or you're picking out a target that's kind of clumped up at the front of the group to use your Devouring Darkness on. Get that AoE boon corrupt out. It's a 900 range skill. If we're going in for a clash, just get this one out first. You could then use your Enfeebling Blood. Your Enfeebling Blood is pretty helpful in that it converts, for starters, a boon into a condition. So it'll convert one boon on an enemy into a condition. It hits 5 people, but it also applies weakness. Assuming that weakness doesn't get cleansed, which might be a poor assumption against the better groups in the game, it provides 50% fumble. Fumble is basically just glancing. I think at a high level, it just causes attacks to deal 50% less damage, and you also lose any critical damage that you would have done. So if we're getting a lot of weakness on the enemy group as they're coming in for a spike, they're going to do a lot less damage. They're going to have one less boon. They're going to have multiple fewer boons if you use your Scepter 3. So it's kind of something to help get the ball rolling in terms of deterrence when an enemy approaches. So like maybe you're opening rotation when you go in, or the enemy's coming towards us. You do like a Scepter 3, a Scepter 2, a Scepter 5. You get all of your AoE skills out. You have some boons corrupted, and we're off to a good start here. Yeah. After that, you have your. Go ahead.
What's so you said you had a rotation, but what's priority? Like what are the skills that are priority for an engagement? Like you should never have it off cooldown.
I would say for ranged opening exchanges, and hold on, Xpand has just mentioned that weakness also reduces endurance regen 50%. They can't dodge as much, yeah. So, one thing we talked about a lot, or have been talking about a lot over the last few weeks, basically ad nauseum, is dodging and how important and integral dodging is to evading attacks. It's free evades. Like you're having 0 damage hit you, and that's just damage or ticks from the enemy that are just completely missing you. They're not doing anything. They're not hurting us at all. Our Firebrand build, you're gonna have some endurance cheer from that. Some of our builds have energy sigils. If you find that you're using your dodges up and you want more, it's okay to use an energy sigil. Get those in there. The more dodges we have in crunch time and in key situations, the more damage we're avoiding, and the longer we stay alive, the less difficult it is on your scrappers and your firebrands to keep you alive. But yeah, just going back to your question, like that opening rotation, your Scepter 3, your Scepter 2, into your Dagger 5, those 3 skills are high value, and whenever we are within range of an enemy or actively ranged engaging with them, you want to make sure you're getting those skills out. So, I don't know about just keeping them all the time off cooldown. You want to make sure we're getting value out of them, like we're able to leverage the boons that you're going to be corrupting as part of a greater ranged exchange. So it's not like you just want to oh, there's 3 people over here, let me go drop, my dagger 5 on them. We're not really going to capitalize off of that. So you want to make sure that you're helping the group or setting up the group to do more damage and to take advantage of, let's say you potentially corrupted stability on the enemy. We need to take advantage of that. So you're kind of setting us up in a sense. We're complementing a greater range, damage spike. The one thing is, these skills are at 900 range. Let's say we're running, a handful of heralds, or, we have some DHs that are able to do some 1200 range spikes. Try not to get too greedy. Some groups you could get away with it, but you got to be a little closer than say 1200. You got to be at 900 to hit your skills. Don't cheat up too much. Don't risk yourself. It's very difficult to get back to me. If we miss the stun break on you, you don't want to waste your trail for that. So it's on me to get in a spot where we can take advantage of these 900 range attacks. Outside of that, you have your axe focus. Your axe focus, like I said, is a little more single target focused. You do have one AoE skill on here, and that's going to be your axe 3. You could think of this as being somewhat similar to your scepter 3, right? It's an AoE boon corrupt. The nice thing about the axe 3, though, is that you don't need to have an enemy targeted. So you can just pop this when we're within range, and you get value out of it. It is a 600 range attack, so you have to be a little closer than the Scepter 3, but you don't need an enemy targeted for it. So yeah, when we're within range, we're going for a hit, maybe more a melee hit since it's a 600 range attack, you're popping your Axe 3. The 2 other skills I really want to talk about from Axe Focus are going to be your 2 and your 5. You have your number 5, which is going to be a pretty heavy hitting single target attack, and it's based off the amount of boons that your enemy has. So you can see that on the tooltip, if you hover over it, 3 boons are going to be doing 2190 base damage, 2 boons 1564, 1 boon 939, so on and so forth. So there's a couple of ways that guilds might use this. So if you see a lower HP target, let's say, a firebrand sitting there, he's really low HP, you might use this to go finish him off. Or let's say you see a dragon hunter. Dragon hunters, as we know, they run more damage oriented armor. They're gonna have less tankiness on them, and they have a lower health pool. Some dragon hunters are sitting at 11 and a half, 12,000 health. Your spinal shivers, your focus 5, if you're hitting a DH with a high amount of boons on them, you could potentially, basically take them down to 2k, 3k health if you land a really nice critical hit with this. And after that, you could just use your axe number 2 to finish them off. Conversely, yeah, I mean, you could do 13k spinals. You could nearly one-hit a dragon hunter, assuming they don't have protection and other protective boons on them. So keep that in mind. When you're in this set, you really only have your axe skill and the spinal shivers and your axe 2. It's not a whole lot to pay attention to. So you have maybe a couple of seconds to quickly tab through the targets and then use your spinal shivers and find a really high value target that you want to try and down. Either a support that's on lower health or a dragon hunter or something like that. And if you don't finish them off, like I said, pop that ghastly claws, your axe 2, and just finish them off. Now, your spinal shivers might be on cooldown. You might only have your axe 2 up. So, you could use that as a finishing move too. You see an enemy, let's say, Shame over here is at half health. I might just pop an axe 2 on him and try and get him down. So, a lot of the times when I'm playing Scourge, I'm in a mode when I'm in this weapon set of trying to identify lower health targets and trying to just, get downs on the enemy that wouldn't have been downed otherwise. We weren't actively engaging in a coordinated range spike at that time. I'm just out here trying to provide value to my group by identifying easy targets to take down. Any questions on those weapon sets?
If somebody's down too, you can use it to finish them.
Yeah. So
to help get up people if we need to.
Maybe there's a target that's single downed, right? So they haven't been finished off yet. you might use like your axe to like quickly try and finish that down so that they don't get res. Some groups are really quick on the signets, or really quick on the illusions. Maybe they got a couple of, or, got like a function gyro down on them, and it's gonna be a little harder to finish them. But using your axe 2 on a down to target is doable. It's something that you could use it for sure.
Something that I need to work on better is I've been trying to weapon swap a lot more often, and using the threes on both, like
Yes.
keeping those constantly on a cooldown.
So if you notice, that's a good point, Callie. Your Axe 3 is going to have a 9.5-second recharge time. Your Scepter 3 is going to have a 10-second recharge time, meaning that you should be able to get 2 Scepter 3s and 2 Axe 3s out per each weapon rotation. So realistically, you should be swapping your weapons roughly every 10 seconds or so. So you could do...
Your pinky gets a workout.
What's that?
Your pinky gets a workout between tabbing and weapon swap, so take care of your pinky.
Yeah.
Seconds is a long time.
What's that?
Sorry, I guess I'm just, I'm used to fast hands. I'm used to 5 seconds. I'm like 10 seconds. I'm gonna be sitting around tapping my feet waiting for weapon swap.
You're a Spellbreaker main. You got it easy with your 5-second weapon swap timer. But yeah, I mean, basically every 10 seconds, swap your weapon set. Make sure you're getting both of your number 3 skills and your weapons out. The more we do this, the more boon corrupts go up, the more chance that we have the ability to hit someone without stab, the more downs we potentially generate. So go ahead, Rhea.
So there aren't really many reasons to use like Dagger 4 or Focus 4?
Focus 4 is your Soul Grasp. I don't know that I really ever use that. I mean, that's like a single target vulnerability and Life Siphon. Not high value. I mean, you could use it, I guess, but it's not like necessary, I suppose. And then
I'll use that on Lord just to get stacks of vulnerability, and then use the axe because the axe does more damage for more vulnerability stacks.
Yeah, I mean,
just to get the Lord done faster.
And then open field, like your Dagger 4, I think its main effect is, really to transfer conditions off of you. So maybe your Scrapper's struggling, you need to like shake some conditions. You could use it. You're stuck in the weapon sets for 10 seconds apiece. And you might not really have much else to do, so you could definitely use it.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Slijin and Truck say they use it for Life Force generation, which is fine.
That's true, Life Force. If you need some Life Force.
Okay.
Yep.
That is true.
Yep. Yeah, but your Dagger 4 is mainly for condition transfer if you really just need to shake some conditions. So, good questions for sure.
Icons, I guess. It's like, I mean, if you targeted us and then tapped through us, you would see the hammer or the mesmer swirl thing.
Yeah. All right, so I guess we could talk about shades afterwards. I've heard a lot of like different perspectives on shades. I don't want to say one's better than the other. Some will use them kind of like coordinated shade spikes or shade bombs. That might be what they use when they call for their smaller cooldown, lighter cooldown AOE spikes. They'll just call them shade spikes. You get your shades down. Shades used to do a lot more damage, so a lot of the damage derived on those types of spikes, from what I know, is not really going to be from your shades. They do have some good utility to them though. So like we'll just take a look at the shades real quick. So your F2, that's going to convert a condition on nearby allies into a boon, but because of the trait that we talked about earlier, it will also convert a boon on enemies into conditions. And those, it's helpful, right? So, and also one thing to note is that also you yourself are a shade because of another trait. So you'll notice when you proc F2 through F5, around your character model, you're going to be applying the same effect because you too are a shade. So just keep that in mind. You don't necessarily need a shade to be down to get value out of it because you're a shade too. So F2 is a condition cleanse, basically, or conversion on allies, and also a boon corruption on enemies. F3 is sand shades sand rises up near your shades to shield nearby allies. This is a barrier generation. It's a really small barrier. I don't want to say completely negligible, but it's only about 1k. It's not anything too crazy. your F4 is going to be a fear, a 1-second fear, and if you're running absorption sigils, that could proc them. Ideally, you're not really using it on coordinated, like, area-focused bombs. You don't really want to be fearing people out of a spike, necessarily. If we have, like, a lot of CC and lockdown in that area, it might not be the biggest deal in the world, but just be mindful of when you're really using it. You don't want to, like, knock people out of, like, a coordinated bomb. And then your Desert Shroud, that's going to be, like, your heaviest damage shade. It's also at the highest life force cost, too. So yeah, it'll do 7 pulses of damage. It'll also provide barrier, but it'll also
Not only
provide.
on you. The
What?
barrier is only on you for that one.
Yeah, so the barrier is only going to be on you. But another nice thing, and due to a trait, we're going to be getting Fury, 5 seconds of it, and also Might. So these days it's been a little difficult to find heralds to really complement every party. So having that extra Fury generation is going to be kind of nice if you don't have a herald in your party. And a lot of the times, people might, turn like a shade, pop their F5, and then get their wells out, right? Because you're going to have that fury and you're getting higher crits. So you can use it sort of as, a complement to your wells before you cast them, to give yourself a little extra damage on that area after, you put a shade down and proc it, but to also give yourself fury and might for that well spike. So it's just making your wells just a little more impactful, because you're going to get a little higher damage out on them. So, that kind of covers shades. Trucks or Callie, do you have any other feedback on shades? I know their damage has been pretty well reduced. You could use it as kind of like a tickle damage on a range spike, a little bit of boon corrupt with your F2, and then like an F5 to help complement your other damage attacks and really set up your wells for a little higher damage, a little higher spike.
No, I think
the only thing I'm going to say is, like, it really depends on who you're running with, because one of the guys I run with, he's like, don't ever emphasize the shades, unless you really have a chance, because casting shades, if it's going to get you dead, then don't worry about it. If you run with PBTs and they want you to haze the walls, take down siege, you run out of life force so easily. Change your trait to go 3-2-3 in Scourge instead of 1-2-3. Because I know a lot of PBT groups, and they start yelling at the Scourges because they're not hazing the walls, and it's like, well, there's no life force.
If they're doing that, you can equip staff, and that kind of helps a
No,
little bit
never,
better.
because then you know what happens? You end up in combat, and then you're
That's true
screwed.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, I would. So there are some guilds out there that recommend staff for their scourges. I would say stay away from that personally. Staff is a lower value weapon set, especially for scourges. I think they drop Scepter Dagger when they put staff on. Like, I mean, imagine losing another 5-target AoE Boon Corrupt, a second 5-target AoE Boon Corrupt, a condition transfer, and then like a lighter damage spike plus cripple. I mean, come on. And I think they're only really using staff number 4 too for like complements on their damage spikes. Which, if you're running enough DHs, you have enough heralds, you have enough scourges doing their job, your range spikes are going to be potent enough where you don't need like the staff 4 for extra damage. So I would say stay away from staff. Get the higher value out of the Boon Corruption because of how valuable Boon Corruption is to a group.
Yep.
So, yeah, we talked about traits, we talked about armor, we talked about utilities, we talked about weapon skills, we talked about our weapon rotations, we talked about our shades. I think that mostly covers everything. Do you guys have any like questions or anything like that?
No, I think at this point it's a matter of getting it out of the brain and into the fingers, if you know what I mean.
Positioning, I mean, yeah, we could like quickly talk about positioning. I think I briefly mentioned that, say I'm the commander, so you guys are following me. You So first of all, the enemy's over here. I'm here. I would say the Scourges want to be here. Keep a line of sight directly to the enemy. You don't really want to be, chilling, say like right here, like right here. You become an easy target. So always keep the enemy in front of you, and like try and draw a line like from from you through the commander to the enemy. I'm sure there's a word for that. But anyways, stay relatively close to me, if not a couple of steps behind. I know in that positioning video we took a look at, the recommendation was stay a little further behind because a lot of the CC, a lot of the focus is going to be on the commander. So just stay like behind me. Does that kind of answer your question? Okay. Cool.
So again, remember, like as a Scourge, you don't really have anything. I mean, you have the one thing for stun break, but you save that as a fighting tool. So you really want to stay closer to your firebrands and your scrappers as you can.
For sure.
Except I will say, more often than not, when you're running with pugs, you have to use your trail. Like, that's just, again, like, I just have trained to not trust my supports unless I'm running with my comped groups. Because
Dodge
ultimately, I trust my supports.
dodge is really important too to stay on your feet as a Scourge is to use your dodge a lot.
Yeah, and like if people get stunned, and they have a mic, it is helpful to hear for stun breaks. I'm going to be trying to emphasize that, right? You know, as we make sure that everyone has about face bound and is easily able to like turn around and give like their stun break from their elite mantra on firebrands. Um, we will try and be better about stun breaking our allies when they get stunned, and having the firebrands be more mindful and keep a greater eye on people who do get caught in the back. Additionally, for scrappers to go back there and maybe provide them some super speed, give them a cleanse or a heal or whatever they might need. Um, you know, our supports, more so than just having to support the group that we're with, we have to support the tail too, because people get left behind. It happens. CCs happen. Boon rips happen. You know, people lose super speed. People lose health. We just got to be keeping an eye out for one another as we move through. I just want to try and get that ingrained in the support's mind so that we don't have to use things like Trail of Anguish for stun breaks. You know, I'm not going to say it's going to happen overnight. It's not going to be perfect, but we're going to try and, you know, be more mindful of it. So. Oh, energy sigils, yes. You could certainly use energy sigils. I have like an optimal like boon rip or damage build. I would say you could probably remove force. I'm using absorption personally instead of force on my weapon set. So if I get, say, you know, a fear, like a corrupt stability into a fear, and I interrupt somebody, um, I will get a proc out of that, and I will steal 3 boons from them. So it's just a little more boon rip. Um, you know, so if you want to instead run, say, you know, I don't know why I have 2 Bloodlust. I screwed up my weapon set. I have to fix that. But anyways, Bloodlust, Absorption on one, and then like Nullification or Absorption Energy on the other. That's cool too. I don't really have a problem at all if people want to get energy sigils into the builds where they don't already exist. Having more dodges is, like I said, highly valuable. So yeah, any other points I may have missed, or any other things, questions, concerns, whatever? Cool. Well, I'm going to stop the recording then.